And welcome back. And our first conversation for today is with the 13th Senator Steering Committee. Of course, we know that this has been a long-awaited implementation, and now that it has officially been signed into order and we have a January deadline, the NGOs have come together in the steering committee to be able to decide who their representative will be. We have with us at this time representatives of the steering committee. We have Osmani Salas, who is the vice chair and also representative for the Belize Tourism Industry Association. And we have Froila Salam, who's the media relations on the steering committee and also representative of SATIM, which is the Sarsoon Tamash Institute of Indigenous Management. Good morning, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's begin by talking about the formation of this particular movement within the NGO community to select the 13th, or to name the individual who will become the 13th senator.
Yeah, well, you know, speaking for BTIA, we got a letter informing us that the Prime Minister had signed the commencement order, you know, for the 13th senator. So in effect, inviting us to a meeting to get the process started. You know, similar to the other, I think, 22 organizations who were deemed in good standing under the NGO Act to get the process started. So that just happened about 2 weeks ago, no further.
Correct.
And we have been, you know, we have scrambled to get the process underway to come up with a nominee for the 13th senator. So just to give you a quick idea about timeline is that by January 17th, we should have that person identified and inform the Governor General about our nominee by January. So we're working for that January 17th date.
Yeah. Now, from the announcement, I had been asking some questions about how this process would be undertaken for the simple fact that we know there is an NGO Act and non-governmental organizations, and there are many NGOs in this country that don't necessarily prescribe to all or fulfill all that is required under the NGO Act. What are the total number of registered NGOs compared to the numbers that are involved in the committee?
Well, we initially had a number of 200 registered NGOs being touted about, but when we actually got the list, it was 143.
Okay.
Of those 143, 22 of us are in good standing. Now, there are various reasons why. Good standing simply means that you prescribe to the NGO Act criteria for being an NGO. And what we found out was the two main barriers for the participation of many NGOs are the audit for those NGOs that have more than $25,000, and the other one is the financial report. A new player has come into the field with the FIU, and all NGOs also have to register their board of directors with the FIU. So with those three things as being the main barriers, I mean, there are many more.
Yeah.
It was the question of how do we deal with these NGOs? So since we know that the NGO Act is what prescribes us and what determines what an NGO is in this country, we decided to use that as the foundation. And since I think there were 22 of us at that meeting with the AG at the Biltmore, and that was the first time we had gotten a meeting with the Attorney General's office regarding this process, and she was very clear. She said, you know what, it's all up to you how you go about doing this.
Yeah.
They did have some criteria, legal criteria, but they said the process is up to you all.
Whether you want to use 22 or 143?
Correct.
Okay.
But since we were the only NGOs in good standing, it made perfect sense to all of us present that we should be the ones involved in this. Now, we said from the get-go that it would not only be us. Our mandate thereafter was to find out who could also participate. And so that's why we had a subsequent meeting, like 5 days after that initial meeting.
Yeah.
And that's when we came up with a further guideline as to how we would participate. Now, there are many more things to be discussed. And so the first thing we set about deciding was the criteria for who could be a nominee for senator and who could nominate.
Okay. Now, I want to get into the specifics of those, but just to ensure that we cover the issue of the number of NGOs versus the number involved. One of the areas that is very evident in this process is that unlike the unions who have the National Trade Union Congress of Belize, the churches who have the Council of Churches, the business sector who have the Belize Chamber of Commerce and the Belize Business Bureau, umbrella organizations that encompass all those who are involved or affiliated with that particular sector. We don't have one overall body for NGOs.
Yes.
We have smaller ones like APAMO for environmental organizations. We have, I know of Women's Issues Network, which deals with women's rights and children's rights. Is this now a move to be able to establish perhaps this very committee as an overall umbrella organization for NGOs?
Yes, and that's the way it needs to be. So, so right now is the entire group, which at this stage is the 22 or so in good standing, as Froila pointed out, that decided to elect a steering committee to steer the process, as the name suggests, and coordinate the process. But from the very beginning, from the get-go, we said we want this to be as inclusive as possible. So we, as a group of 22, have said we want to give the rest of the list of 143 the opportunity to get in good standing and be involved in the process. So we've made it clear, though, that only NGOs in good standing will be allowed to nominate, someone for that senator post. What we haven't determined yet, which we will need to do during this month and early next month, is for the ones that are registered but not in good standing, what will their role in the process be? And will they be allowed to vote when it comes time to voting for the senator nominee or not? So these are issues that we're looking at. We haven't determined yet.
You haven't determined.
But in terms of who can nominate, they need to be in good standing.
Yes.
And where the nominees can come from is from NGOs in good standing, from amongst the members, their board members, their staff members.
Okay.
And general membership in some
And their
cases.
general membership, thank you.
So it's a huge pool, and I think again that was with the spirit of inclusivity, because in the past I think NGOs have only been quite vocal or visible through their executive directors.
That's right.
However, behind that executive director is a whole bunch of other people who play a very vital role in the running of our country. And so that way we're able to include more people. So I think we are basically being very generous. We are being more open than closed.
I use the example, sorry, just quick. I use the example of BTIA and Audubon Society.
Yeah.
Those two organizations alone have over 500 members. So we have, I think it's accurate to say we have hundreds of people to consider, to choose from.
Once this process is completed and you present your nominee and that entire process concludes, how would you respond to a criticism? And I ask this because the foreign minister has gone on record to say that with regards to having a 13th senator join the upper parliamentarians, it's just another individual who will oppose whatever progress government intends to move forward with. So in other words, the thought is the Senate can't really stop certain things from happening in terms of voting and that sort of stuff. It's more like a rubber stamp, so to speak. But they're also saying, look, the 13th person is only going to serve to attempt to either thwart or stymie whatever progress the government or whatever agenda the government has in terms of moving ahead. How would you respond to that?
There's one thing that unites all of us, or should unite all the NGOs, and it is that our key function is sustainable human development, and that's enshrined within the same NGO Act. Right, be it nature conservation, be it women's issues, gender issues, and there's a long list. Education on the Constitution, public health, and all of that. It's about sustainable human development. So, and I have heard from a couple colleagues, who have called me and said, we have seen your press release, we have seen your criteria, and it is more rigid than the one we have. He says, wow. I said, yeah, because we mean business. We want to raise the bar. We want to raise the bar in terms of transparency and accountability. So it's not about, about stymieing the process or
being in opposition.
Or being in opposition. It's about being part of the sustainable human development of this nation.
Now, and I'm glad you brought that up because your criteria is very rigid. And my question is, how do you, I mean, some of them are easy to be able to identify. A Belizean without residency in another country or allegiance to another country, that's something you can be able to test. But being able to look at some of the important ones, which is, of course, being non-partisan. For so long, and we still continue to see in this country, where people cannot distinguish those who speak out without viewing them through the lens of being partisan. In other words, you speak out against or for something and you are either for the current administration or for the opposition. How do you identify whether a person is non-partisan?
We had a robust debate on that
I
very
think it's an
same issue.
excellent point, but I'm questioning how you can be able to assure that.
We live in a small country. All of us know each other's business. And I think one of the things I made plain in an interview is that whoever is the senator will have to be a political animal.
Yeah.
Because we live in a society. However, the issue of partisanship does color the relationship that we have with different people. And I think it's fairly easy enough once we get those persons identified, which one clearly are the overtly political ones. Now, you have the right to be a part of any political party in this country.
Freedom of association.
We cannot take that away. However, that should not color your relationship with whoever you deal with. I mean, I always use this example. We wear multiple hats in any one given day. Like right now, Osmani has 2 hats. I have 3 hats because I'm also the chair of APAMO. So when I'm here though, talking to you, I was clear it's going to be about the 13th senator. When I leave this room and go to another interview, I'll be wearing another hat.
Yes.
And so that's what we do on a regular basis. Now the problem is how we negotiate those rules so that we don't unduly influence for the good or for the worse of our organizations. So I don't think it's as difficult as you're making it out to be. And I think, as what Osmani said, as NGOs, we have a higher bar.
I don't want to sound...
But to be specific,
Yeah.
it's all that Froila said. But right, in addition to that, and we've specified that in the release that we put out, that the person shouldn't be overtly political. What do we mean by that? It means, working, being an activist, working at getting a political party elected. For example, being a part of their party executive, or being on the national executive. Those are specific examples of what we want to ensure that whoever is a nominee or the candidates for nominee are not that.
Let me ask a very clear question. Froila, you're a great example. You have run for office before. So based on that experience, does that make you ineligible to be the nominee?
That was part of what the robust discussion included, because we actually wanted to put a limit, 3 years, 5 years, and I think, we just left it open because it's really difficult to do that. Now, if I were to be nominated, the first question would be, is Froila overtly political? And you'd have to look at my
track record.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to do. I mean, when we do the nominations, we're going to look at each person individually and have them give a biodata. It's like a job.
I don't want to seem overly hypothetical, but if one were to look at the recent situation with regards to the churches, and when they were placed in that, I call it a quandary, because it seemed as if though one person went against what the original body had agreed upon. How do you, and some would say that's based on a political slant as well.
Yeah.
How do you avoid this type of thing from happening?
We haven't had a lot of time to discuss the organization of all of this, right? But what we have discussed at the one major meeting we've had is that the person will be required to sign on to a like a contract, for lack of a better term right now, to abide by certain principles. The steering committee, representing the larger group of the NGOs, will be like an advisory group that should be in constant, touch with this person. So what we were talking earlier is that once a nominee is identified, the work then really starts, because our group, steered or coordinated by the steering committee, will have to talk about the values that bind us together, about the process that we'll follow, right, as an example, if the senator goes contrary to the advice of the group, what do we do? These things will be put in place.
How about public persona? Because that was a great example. Following that vote, we saw Facebook posts of I support ex-minister, I'm happy this party won, participating in political rallies. I mean, are these, it's understanding the reason, and I want to put it completely into context. There was a huge delay on this issue, and the Prime Minister was extremely, it was a part of his campaign going into the election.
2008.
Exactly. And it was an outright refusal because he said it would stall the process of being able to implement certain decisions made by government. So I just want to give you the opportunity to be able to explain very clearly what steps you'll undertake. And the pressure should not just be on the NGO community, it should be on the Council of Churches, it should be on the union, the social sector representatives. But since you all are in the process of formalizing, do you even look at public persona? When you speak about being able to look at the track record, are those some of the things that you'll be looking at?
All of them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, everything.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, we want somebody who can represent us with our issues that we hold dear to our heart, human development. And if that person is doing an effective job for these X reasons, we need to be able to try identify those possible incidences from occurring. And that's why we want to definitely create a terms of reference that says, you must consult with us, and when you fail to do so, these are the repercussions.
Yeah.
Because we don't want we don't have that much influence, really, but the little that we do have, we want to be really strong and vibrant on that issue and be very clear on what positions we stand on things that we will tolerate and not tolerate.
Let me ask
And as a
question, yeah.
member of an organization that is a part of this, as a representative of the BTIA, I do expect that there will be some guiding principles by which this entire thing will abide by, which suggests that there will be instances when our senator will vote on the government side, and other instances when they will vote on the other side. So I expect that to happen. So, but it will be based on the matter at hand. It will be based on a review of the documentation, and using the advisory group, the advisory committee as a sounding board. And then, but the idea is that the senator should always be receiving guidance from the advisory group.
In the first instance, because eventually we hope to be able to develop into a more comprehensive type of organization. But right now we're fairly...
You're on a tight deadline.
We're on a tight deadline, and I think we're actually doing quite well. I think we're doing quite well.
It's been 8 years since this manifesto promise came to light. The ruling party in 2008 had the 13th senator as one of those campaign promises, so to speak, in terms of having another partner come on board in upper parliament. 8 years has elapsed. You guys now have an opportunity to go ahead and name someone who will become the 13th senator. Is there any one issue, either looking back from 2008 to now, that you would want to address coming in terms of either catching up or see discussed or what have you in the Senate?
I mean, I can be upfront and tell you, we're not there yet. We are focusing on identifying this person. But we will have to get there. That will be one of the first orders of business after the nominee is identified. There will certainly be issues that we will want to advocate for.
And I think this is part of what I find very interesting, having had a background in the NGO sector. The mandates and the objectives of NGOs are so broad, from meeting the needs of the vulnerable communities to working with indigenous persons to looking at development and tourism opportunities to the great environmental issues that we faced. They're so diverse. And I wonder, how do you find a representative that will be able, and I know you will say it'll be going back to the steering committee, but I'm sure that's part of the challenge. If you have somebody who perhaps is a wonderful advocate for gender equity, and there's an issue regarding perhaps environmental issues. How do you ensure they're a well-rounded nominee that they can be representative of all NGOs?
Well, that's a tough call. However, what APAMO did in 2008, along with other umbrella organizations, was start the same process that now we have taken as well. And one of the main things they had advocated for from the umbrella organizations was position papers. You need to have position papers, well-researched theses on a particular, whatever the subject is. And you need to give that to your representative. Because like what you said, it's hard, even though I know a lot about all these little things, it will be very difficult for me to say with great authority and knowledge, this is the position and this is why. So we're going to be helping that person by each organization or umbrella organization coming up with a position paper on various topics on environment, health, gender, politics, whatever the position is. Because the other issue going forward is how does a senator engage with 20, right now it's 23, but quite potentially maybe 40 NGOs. And especially given the tight deadlines they're given, like 3 or 4 days to read a huge stack of paper and come up with a well-developed argument on whatever is being discussed. It's very difficult, so that person will need a team. And I think that's what Osmani was hinting at earlier, that we will need to help this person. And for us, the burden on each NGO, and if they have an umbrella organization, is to come up with those statements.
Now, we've seen that within the National Trade Union Congress of Belize, as an umbrella organization for the unions, we've seen the bureaucracies that they have to deal with internally. The individual who's chosen to represent the umbrella organization of unions can't speak with any certainty or authority without first having to go back. And there's this robust process of checking with this union, that union, etc. It's very bureaucratic.
It is.
How do you guys, based on that as an example, prepare yourselves to either be able to come up with a system or a process that allows this individual to be able to speak in terms of some measure of certainty on a given issue?
Well, I think I can probably refer to it earlier with the position papers that suggests that they will have to be researched before. I'm not exactly sure about how much time is given right before Senate meetings as to what will be discussed, but in the expectation is there will be some time, and we'll have to help that person with information that person will need to have, for the actual sitting at the Senate. There will be instances, from what I gather, where a special session will be called with very little notice. But that also suggests that whoever we select needs to be well-rounded, well-read,
on top of what's happening.
Exactly. Just needs a little guidance.
Exactly so.
It's an excellent opportunity, and I think that's, an NGO representative, ideally, as Ferla pointed out, is really looking at the human development aspects. And I think that could be your foundation, like the unions are about the workers and the churches are about their faith. Now, let's get a bit into the nominees and the nomination process so we can have that very clear. How does one nominate a person, and who is eligible to be nominated?
We were talking about that earlier, actually. Let me establish again, like what Osman has been saying, this is a work in progress. However, as a first point, only nominees, persons to be nominees can only come from organizations of good standing. And there are 22 of us.
Is there a list we can find right now?
At this gate, yes. We do have a list that came from the Attorney General's office. So we can circulate that. It's not top secret. We have a Facebook that I can attach that onto. We, at the end of December 19th, will have a better idea of which all organizations those are. Because the other issue that was preventing organizations from being on the list of good standing was that they were not registering at the right place. So hopefully by then, those organizations that were not doing the right thing, again, the steering committee is coming up with a list as to what they all need to do in order to be able to be registered properly. So I think as a good ground, December 19th will be the deadline. And like what Isani was saying, we've had this 8 years in the making. So you can't really say this happened overnight. So if you are not doing that before, well, if you want to have a shot at this, for this round, because there's nothing to stop you from participating in the next round of senator. But for this one, the race started. and we are on our way.
And how the NGOs should know what
Yes.
it takes to be in good standing.
And-
When they registered, they were informed about that, and they submitted their first pile of documents,
Yeah.
right? So they know.
And I was going to say that it's also a great opportunity to keep NGOs in good standing, because
Exactly.
we have a lot
Exactly.
of pop-up NGOs. I want one fundraiser, so I start up
Right,
NGO,
right,
and then I'm dead after that.
It isn't that
Yeah.
easy to register as an
Yeah.
NGO, you know.
Yeah.
You have to be a company limited by guarantee with your memorandum articles of association, your board,
Board, minutes.
the entire structure. So it takes some work, and then to be in good standing, it takes more work, you know, on an annual basis. But what we have decided as a group is that we will divvy up the list. Even if we have to call up people and say, please, you know, this is what you need to do. Our email address is Belize 13th 13th, Belize 13senator@gmail.com. We have a Facebook page. So, you know, people have been contacting us already.
And that's what about the 121 other NGOs who have not been classified as NGO in good standing? Will you reach out to them
Yes.
in
Yes,
terms
that's
of
the
being
same
able?
That's what I
list
just said, yeah.
Will
That's
they
what it's
perhaps
on.
have one collective vote outside? I mean, is there a process in terms of how they will be engaged? Because, and to be fair, it's not 121 defunct NGOs.
no.
It's
There are a few,
sometimes they're
but
behind
not
with
many.
with keeping up with what they're
Right,
supposed to
right.
do.
Yes. December 19th will give us a better idea of how many of those 143 are able to participate in a nomination process. Thereafter, we will have to look at which NGOs are not, and it could be that they were defunct from the get-go,
Yeah.
or they're still active. Again, we will have to take that back to our general body and say, what do we do with these ones now? Can they elect, or that is what we don't know yet, and it's
Yeah.
very difficult for us to answer clearly, precisely because we have not discussed the issue. But we are mindful that may well occur, and when it time happens, and hopefully we'll have a better way of doing it. But for now, this is what the process is.
Yes, and what is clear for us at this time is that the nominee would need to come from the NGOs in good standing.
That was a
Yeah.
From the 22
From-
at this point.
That
Or
was-
whatever
yes.
the number ends up being by December 19th.
Okay.
Yes.
And does it have to be a part of their board and executive, or can it be a member? What's the criteria in terms of where the nominee can come from?
It can be from their board, it can be from their staff, and it can be from their general membership.
Wow, the nominee.
The nominee, yes, the nominee.
Oh, wow.
That's what we're saying.
Okay.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Mine was talking about, his organizations and BTIA and Belize Audubon Society.
Yeah,
the
those
membership
two alone
alone
have
have 500 members.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking about 22 NGOs. It's 22 NGOs plus.
Times a couple
membership.
hundred.
So
Their
we could
respective
easily
membership.
have. I am.
That's a huge pool to
Yeah.
select
It is a
person
huge
We should look at it
pool.
from a positive sense.
Exactly.
We have a big pool to choose
Yeah.
from. So I think it will not be difficult in my mind to find the right person.
I don't
Or the
either.
right persons that can then go up for election
So
to be the nominee.
there will be a process to select this one individual, and then a process to put a team together. How does that part of it work?
Which team?
Because you're saying that whoever this person will be in terms of becoming the 13th senator, you'll have a team of advisors
committee.
who will, a steering committee that would be able to pass on certain information in a timely manner with regards to whatever the issue may be. And I'm asking now, would you guys then have another selection process to put this team together?
We have kind of started with the steering committee here. But like I said, we haven't discussed the roles and responsibility yet.
Yeah.
When that discussion takes place, then obviously the question will be who will be supporting the senator. And we will have to have persons named, because
Yeah.
obviously that person has then the full responsibility of doing research on whatever the issue is,
Precisely.
or what is most important to APAMO. For instance, in my case, we know what it is, and so our senator, when environmental issue comes up, we want that senator to be talking about this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Likewise, for tourism and economic growth, I would imagine.
Yes.
They have, so I don't think it's going to be that difficult, but I think at that meeting, that is when we're going to come up with those advisors or support team to the senator.
As I mentioned earlier, what will be very important, given the diversity of the group, as you pointed out, Marlene. I mean, we're all over the map when it comes, but it's all human development related. Is that we will need to have, organizational values, guiding principles that are non-negotiable and that keep us together. That all of us can subscribe to. That is important, and we will need to focus on that after this election is done. It will be challenging, and it will be so it will be helpful to have these guiding principles to keep us together.
Now let's talk opportunities that come from having an NGO senator specifically. As you pointed out, there's a wide range of issues that are addressed by NGOs in this country, from very large ones to small ones. What do you see as the greatest opportunity of having a representative in the Senate who specifically looks after the interests of the non-governmental organization community?
Well, from my standpoint, the interest will be for the proper and responsible development of Belize, because NGOs have a role to play. NGOs basically try to fill a gap that is there, that needs filling, for which right, let's say government has not been able to address satisfactorily or completely. The NGOs come to fill that gap. And it's all development related. So I lost my train of thought there.
That's all right. I know it's a tough question, but I think it's important to address. People, when we say NGO, it's kind of just a term we point out, but when you start saying SATIM, Indigenous Management,
but it's not about the particular interests of the individual NGO. It's about the larger development issues, right? So whoever will be there, let's say if that person comes from SATIM, if the nominee ends up being somebody from SATIM, that person obviously won't be there just to push SATIM's agenda forward. But the larger issue, the larger development issues, right?
Yeah, and I think for us, I can only speak for my part for environment and talk about sustainable development of people. That's what we're looking at. Whatever policy comes to the national attention, or whatever happens in terms of our national development as a country, we want that whatever development takes place is long-term and is good for the people of Belize. I mean, I can't say it more clearly than that. We are a civil society. And that's what we want. We want responsible development for our people. And that means we look at people along with their environment, along with the economy that takes place, economic growth. What are the policies that would promote sustainable economic growth? So, I mean, the huge, we are in everything. And so the responsibility that we have is quite big. And we know what it means at the ground level, because many of us are grassroots organization. We work there, so we want to be able to take what we see, our experience from the ground, and relate that into a well thought out development policy for our country.
You have a good idea of the real problems on the ground, and also work very hard to find money, which is a forever challenge for NGOs.
I can tell you that given the diversity right now, right, even with the 22, it's a very diverse group. I can tell you, I've been pleased. I've been pleasantly surprised with how the discussions have gone. And how it has been a fairly united group. In the way we went about selecting the steering committee, the process forward.
Within like 2.5 hours.
Very quick. So
for people who've never worked before, I mean, it's amazing that we.
Several of them I've met for the first time.
Yes.
So this is not a question per se, it's just an observation from my end, looking at how far this entire movement has come, particularly insofar as everything that has been happening nationally since September, I'd say, insofar as the teachers and the unions and all this move. This is, to me, testament to people power. When people decide collectively, you know what, we need to move towards implementing certain things. This promise has sat on the table for 8 years. It essentially took the teachers who went to the streets to say, you know what, based on our 8 points, this is one of them. And I think looking at it from that perspective.
And sacrifice almost half their salary.
And I think looking at it from that perspective gives a greater appreciation for the outcome of what has happened since.
Absolutely.
And the teachers were asking for better governance, things like that. I mean, which is why we're saying, as a group of NGOs, right, that's what we meant when we said raise the bar. We want to ensure that our process is transparent, and the way forward is also transparent, and our senator is accountable to his or her community. So we have a challenge ahead of ourselves, and I think, I strongly feel we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a positive development, and we're thankful for the teachers for having almost forced the issue. Because, like we said, it's not something out of the blue. It's been there.
Yeah.
It was a promise that was made, a promise reneged, or put on hold because of the potential negative impact. But I don't think that's a reason to stop something from happening.
Yeah.
Let the process play itself out, and then we can say, you see, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't make a prejudgment on something that hasn't taken place yet. So I think we have definitely acted in a responsible manner, the 22 of us who gathered, and we're there for one purpose,
Yeah.
better governance and
I
transparency.
must mention, just quickly though, I must say kudos to the Attorney General. She invited the
She initiated the process.
She initiated it, and she made it clear when we got together. I'm not here to influence the process. I'm just here to convene you. I'm out. It's your
Yes,
process.
yeah.
But it was that ministry, that the AG that brought us together, and she offered us the opportunity to ask legal questions.
Yeah.
So we needed some things clarified, and then it's our process.
It is a great time to look forward to, for the simple fact, and I don't want to, I think the context is important here. When the promise for the 13th senator was made, it was at a time where Belizeans were demanding transparency. And the real difference in views then was, should it have been an elected senator versus a 13th senator? The current administration, the party that won at that time, conducted a referendum. This has been something that we have long awaited, and it is very good to hear that you have such an extensive process in such a short timeline to be able to get the best candidate possible.
Yes.
What is your deadline for nominees?
The
19th?
the dates right here.
January
What is-
3rd.
what is-
January 3rd.
That's when we're going to be
The
electing.
presentation of nominees is January 3rd. Election date is January 10th.
Okay. And the steering committee will vet the nominees that they fit all this
Yes.
criteria
yes,
that you
exactly.
have.
We might even interview them.
I think we do, and maybe that person will have to make statements to the general body
Okay.
before the election takes place. This is not just some secret.
Yeah.
No. This is going to be very open, and that's what we want it to be. So that when that person is selected, nobody can come back from among the NGOs in good standing that it was not a democratic process.
Right.
And currently it is 22, but it may be more by
We
December
expect it to
19th.
grow.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And where do we find the list of NGOs in good standing at
Post
this
it on
point
the
in
Facebook
time?
page,
There's a
put-
Facebook
later
page?
on this afternoon because I'm here.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, we now have an email, we have a Facebook page. So again,
What's the Facebook page?
13th Senator, Belize 13th Senator. I have it
Belize
right here.
13th Senator.
Yeah, 1-3.
Okay.
It's the same as the email.
13th.
Belize 13th Senator at Facebook. So I will be posting that list as well.
All right. And if someone knows there are a member in good standing as well of those
Well, there are two
NGOs,
lists. There's the list of good standing and then the 143,
The 143
which
registered.
registered. And we would
Registered.
really want those organizations to step forward and make themselves known.
Yeah.
Find out why they have not been in good standing, and then we can help them or as much as possible. But I think that's important because they have to want to participate too.
Yeah.
For those listening out there right now, we'll put the lists on the Facebook page that see that they are not on the list. We suggest that you contact the Attorney General Ministry directly.
find out what needs
to find out why. The AG gave her her personal number, and she
Yeah.
said she's available, and she'll answer calls to find out, and then get on the list.
Get on the
Be
list.
involved in the process.
What would you like to say to the public in closing about this process? Yeah?
Very much said and done. It's all clear. Everything.
Do you have any final words?
Encourage people
To
to
the registered
nominate.
NGOs,
Yeah?
get in good standing, be involved in the process, in the process of nominating and electing,
Okay.
selecting the candidate.
January 3rd is the deadline. Find them on Facebook or send them an email if you would like to nominate someone for the 13th senator or the
Yes.
senator representing the NGOs in Belize. They must be from certain organizations, which means you'll have to find that list to be able to know for sure.
I
Right?
hope a few weeks from now we bring that person.
And there's some very clear criteria,
forward to
so
that.
read the criteria
Yeah,
before you make your nomination. All right? Thank you very much
Thank you
for
very
joining
much for the
us.
opportunity.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be speaking to 3 persons who are living with diabetes to speak about the issue of maintaining and living with this condition on commemoration of World Diabetes Day. Stay tuned.